here's what I want to start with. You and I go way back. Obviously, a lot of years, like I said, back to the 1900s. But the thing that I always liked about you, Jay, is you had that entrepreneurial spirit in no matter what you did. Now, you started as a teacher. In fact, you and I had similar paths. We both started as teachers, did a little bit of entrepreneurial stuff. You had the DJ, the DJ boom music.
Yeah.
Started there. 1-800 got junk for myself.
Yeah.
And then obviously you built Picatic into something that was awesome and was, purchased by Eventbrite. But let's go back to, when you decided to leave teaching, and I left teaching as well, was it because that entrepreneurial spirit just didn't mesh with the teaching environment?
Yeah, no, yeah, and so thank you for reminding me how old we are. Or we are, but yeah. So in the past, I was a teacher for 12 years, and it's a great experience, and I love teachers, and the profession is fantastic. Yeah. The thing that I did see, and for me, is like I'm an educator, but I'm also a lifelong learner. And I plateaued on learning. And, I knew that after 12 years, just like, this is not what I think what my day-to-day is going to be. I want to develop. And I come from a family of entrepreneurs. So I've seen what entrepreneurship is. Yep. And at the same time, while in university, I started Boom Music, which is a DJ company. And I had companies on the side, if you will. And they were doing extremely well.
Side hustle, they would call it now.
Side hustles, yeah. Which were actually full-on businesses. So my teaching was, 0.5, wasn't full-time by the end of it. But the big thing that I thought to myself is like, I saw tech, and I saw the emergence of startups happening, and I saw a great opportunity to go and build something that I thought could penetrate the world, and I wanted to learn that. And so, part of what I wanted to do was do exactly that, is kind of maybe take my lifelong learning and take it in another direction through entrepreneurship.
Okay. So that leads me to my next question, because you said you had an entrepreneurial background in the family.
Yeah.
And I want to get into that a little bit. My family wasn't entrepreneurial, but I still have an entrepreneurial spirit. Obviously, the podcast and other things that I've done. So are entrepreneurs born? Are they created? Are they part, a result of their own environment?
For me, I can speak to myself. I don't know if they're born or they're created, but what I did see is I saw my family. I mean, what they've done is they built something from nothing. They created, they had a vision. They really created business and value for other people, and that really resonated with me. There's a few pragmatic things about it. It's like I'd be completely honest, is I see there's a great opportunity to create wealth creation. And,
sure.
And you see, like, okay, well, I've seen entrepreneurs, and I see exactly how they create wealth and enterprise value. And when you start learning a little bit about the financial literacy aspect of that piece, I was like, okay, well, I saw that I was born into that. And then with a teaching background, it's like there's no formal education for commerce. And so I do think that my education for commerce and, the foundation of it came through the life lessons of home. So I would say that piece is born into it. And then executing and growing into it. I mean, those are all things that I effectively had to learn diving into it. So, But one thing that I did throughout this whole entire aspect that I was learned, and that's something that I was not scared of, is risk. And so that's something inside there that, that recipe, that DNA is something that I was extremely open to and seeing, and risk is just a data point. And that's something that was just in our family that was inherent in me. So that I was definitely born with.
You said something really interesting, and what I wanted to touch upon today was risk.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurs seem to have this, almost like this shield that protects them from fearing risk. What is that? Because I think that is something that is inherent within an entrepreneurial spirit, and they're not afraid to fail, it seems. And that is one risk, but it's not only the risk of just failure of an idea not coming to fruition, but it's also the risk of losing a lot of money in the process, and potentially losing friends, influencers. What is that? What is it in you? Because I don't like risk, even though my wife and I took a big risk owning the franchise. But what is it in entrepreneurs that you think kind of shields them from that fear of risk?
Yeah, I think it's it's not. I don't really look at it as a shield of of risk. I thought, the way I looked at it, I thought it was more risky for me to stay in a profession. I got my ceiling in learning, and that was more risky to me. So I saw that an opportunity, and I have this belief that if I'm not learning, I'm burning. And this 30 years going to go by, and every day is going to be the exact same. That scares the weebie-jeebies out of me. It did. So that entrepreneurial aspect of it, and so. And then like my
Is
relationship.
it a fear of stagnation?
For me, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
It's this year of like looking back on my life when I just realized like, and to be honest, again, nothing away from the teaching profession, but
Sure.
the last 5 years could have been 1 year. I couldn't tell you the difference between each of those years because it was the exact same kind of day and it's sort of groundhoggy. And so I wanted to grow, I wanted to develop. And so that was extremely risky. And then, and then when it comes to like entrepreneurial risk, it's like my appreciation, my relationship with risk is extremely different. And a lot of it came with my time living in San Francisco as well.
Okay.
And the relationship with it is risk is just a data point. It is actually how the sausage.
You said that twice now, and I
Yeah,
want to hear. I want to know what you mean by that. But finish your thought.
Yeah, sure. But it's just how the sausage is made. It's like in order in life, in order to really move forward, we just got to continually fail and fail forward. I don't romance it, but I absolutely celebrate it. And when living in San Francisco, one of the things that that really dawned on me, and I was at an event and with a whole bunch of other founders, and a conversation came up in my first week, and one founder was talking about how he raised $100 million and his company blew up. The other one is like, I did $50 million and it blew up. And they were wearing it like a badge of honor, like just and not like, again, romancing it, but it was just a badge of honor is that they took leaps and they took bounds and they would put themselves out there. And and it really dawned on me is like that's the only way the world gets changed is by folks going out there and taking these jumps and these bounds. What's the worst that could happen? It's like to me it's like okay, I just start again.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you say risk as a data point, basically we're saying it's just part of the journey. Yeah. You expect it. Yeah. There's going to be those low points, those valleys, and it's just a data point in the sense of your P&L sheet or balance sheet or whatever. But the risk it's just part and parcel. It's part of being an entrepreneur.
Well, sure. And when I coach and mentor and talk to entrepreneurs around the world, it's like, it's like if you're doing your job right, you're making bigger problems for yourself tomorrow than they are today. So, for example, the first time I had to expand to Europe, didn't know how to. You know what I mean? And so, like, we're failing forward. We're taking these risks, and it's like, but ultimately, what I did learn as I got more experience, and the highs aren't so high, the lows aren't so lows. You get pretty good at staying consistent. But often is when we think about these things, is starting a business or diving into what you think you might want to build from let's say a startup or doing something meaningful. You don't have to jump off a cliff. It's generally like a first step. It's like, where do we get incorporated, or what do we want to call the name? It's like, okay, it's all these little steps that forward, and some we fail at. We fail fast, we fail cheap, and we want to do it, as fast and cheap as we possibly can, as you just mentioned, and just keep going.
So, let's back up. Let's catch people up here. Yeah. So, and we won't go too far back because we don't once again tell people how old we are. But educator, DJ, side hustle, so to speak. Obviously, with Picatic, the event ticketing platform, sold that to Eventbrite. Worked with Eventbrite for a few years, right? And then I don't know if there's a gap or not between Eventbrite and the latest venture with Gunkii. But I also know you're doing some mentoring and coaching. Yeah. So let's fill in the gap there from Eventbrite into the venture into Gunkii and so forth.
Sure. They had great ambitions to go out there and build a tech company and penetrate the world, which we did, and luckily enough to run it through the gamut of exit, and Eventbrite did acquire it, which is fantastic. During that time of running a startup, it's a full contact sport, and so I don't, there's running businesses take time, money, or time and effort. And so during that time, my wife gave up her doctorate so I can go out there and pursue mine. And my wife also did majority of the heavy lifting when it came to parenting. So I then had an opportunity to come back and and be the support in our family.
Yes.
Drop off and pickups and being coaching. So
Yeah.
during that time, in the last 5 years, I've predominantly been doing that. I did start up a little lifestyle company, which is fantastic. It's an oral health company. We do luxury tongue scrapers, which is good. It's very Indian. It's something that my parents have been doing for 60 years,
Okay.
40 years. So
Interesting.
yeah, so that's been good. Something that can build, and that's been done. But now my son's at an age where he's 11. He's more interested in playing with his friends. So
Yeah.
I have time and effort. So I've been asked to come on as entrepreneur in residence, expert in residence for different. We're here at a incubator. And so helping companies here and throughout the world, and coaching, mentoring, and speaking. So that's what I've been doing. And
Okay.
yeah.
Nice. So let's get back to the concept of risk, because I think that's a big topic within entrepreneurialism. What's the biggest risk you've ever taken?
Without doubt, like I think the biggest risk is I had a 10-year teaching career. It was everything. It was good to really move myself out of Saskatoon, where everything is extremely company, and Saskatoon is a small city, and it's my hometown. And so that had the network in my nest, and it's where my university was. To really put myself and move to San Francisco.
That was the first move?
Yeah, and then Toronto, then New York, and
Right.
to be into these different environments, that was my biggest risk. And the best way that I can explain it, and I'm Canadian, but I explain it is that you're a great hockey player in Guatemala, and then you come up to Canada, and the kids that play street hockey are better than you.
Right.
You know what I mean? You have good raw talent, but they just got it. And that was my biggest risk, is really putting myself in environments where I was not equipped, didn't have the toolkit, and had a lot to learn, and to really try and build something that I think would go out there and penetrate the world, and the world would love.
Is that like the analogy of saying, if you're not the smartest person in the room, change rooms?
Maybe.
Yeah.
And
It sounds like that. Like, it's like, no offense to, our hometown, but at the same time, it's like sometimes you got to take the risk and put yourself in a position where you are the, for lack of a better term, dumbest person in the city, in the room, and to learn from others that are bigger and better.
That is something that I put myself in. That happened to me a lot. And to the point, and I'm moving down there. I'd get panic attacks and shingles, and I was like, so it was so outside of my scope. Go to events, and I remember one event. There's one prominent CEO who came up to me and said, like, "You're not ready to be here." And it's because when we had our introduction, I went on and on. And my hometown, we talk about the weather, and we'll go through it. And it's like, no, here we got to the point, a little bit faster. On Sandhill Road, went into one of the pitch events, and one of the VCs said, like, "This is the worst pitch I've ever heard in my life." But not to be they aren't being malicious. They came back with insights. And now talking to these people as we go back, he was right. Well, they were right, and it just it made me better. I rose to the occasion, and I had blind sights that otherwise I didn't know.
How did you feel in that moment when he said that? And what was, I mean, you're going to have your initial visceral reaction when someone just kind of tears you apart a little bit. But what was your response after that?
I didn't have really a big response out of it. Like, I wasn't going to get confrontational. I had extremely big ego. As I was leaving, Alberta Venture wrote a magazine, and top 10 people know in Saskatchewan to do business. And so it's like, they had this ego. Yeah. And it was just...
Someone tore it down a little bit.
Yeah, and so with that, realized that piece was not serving me. And realized that actually there's a lot to learn. So it was exactly what I needed when I needed it. And it's like it got me extremely uncomfortable. And the lesson I learned out of that, and this is one of the best things, is that I have a new relationship with comfortability. And when I always work towards, perhaps before, is being in the most comfortable area. And I realized in those moments when I was uncomfortable, if I look back and I take a look at the delta of my learning, that's where I had the biggest growth, the biggest rewards in life. And so now it's ironic that when I'm uncomfortable, I'm the most comfortable. because I know that I'm growing, I'm pushing myself. And so that is something that it's a muscle that needs to work on. And I encourage anybody and everybody to even just look at when you are the most uncomfortable and do an audit of how much you've learned in that. And I'm sure that there's going to be a direct correlation. And so if you can work on that muscle to keep yourself in there, you're going to see a lot of growth. That happened for me, and I'm sure it happens for other people as well.
Two of the things that I've been preaching in my philosophy has been, and obviously the brand of the company, effort over results, but growth mindset as well. And being uncomfortable is how you grow. You said it yourself. I don't think that's anything new. I think people recognize that. A lot of people don't want to be uncomfortable though. But I think, if you're not moving forward, you're stagnant, you're sitting still. But I love what you said about that. And the reason why I asked you the question when that VC basically said, this is the worst pitch we've ever heard. You could have gone one of two ways with that. Obviously your ego was hurt. You could have lashed out. You could have, like, what does he know? I'm sure you took the feedback eventually once you processed it and realized that you grew from it, you got better from it. How can I be better? So you took it eventually as good feedback. And I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with. I struggle with it myself. Negative feedback to me still is something that I have to play with and learn through growth mindset how to get better from it, no matter how deep the insult. But there's that ego. And I want to tell you something about ego. And the thing that I posted this on LinkedIn a few weeks ago. I said two of the things that are the greatest detractors for entrepreneurs and business owners is ego and distraction. Would you agree with that?
Help me understand distraction. I'd love to learn more about your. I need the word absolutely.
Absolutely.
On the distraction word, I'd love to learn more.
Sure. I think entrepreneurs, there are entrepreneurs out there that may not be in it for the right reasons, and or business owners. It goes back to this. I remember, any person who started their own business, one of the first things that came out of their mouth was, I want to be my own boss, right? And we're going to talk about the difference between entrepreneurs and business owners, because I think there's a subtle difference there. But the distraction is that instead of sticking to a plan, number one, having a plan, which is critical, but in sticking to a plan, they get distracted by that shiny thing that they think will make them the next big amount of money, or that thing that will place their ego a little bit higher on the pedestal. And I think that's where, when I have business coached for the last 15 years, what I've seen in business owners is that, best analogy I can give, Jay, is this. You're in a football game, you have a game plan, you think you can win with this game plan, and the other team runs the opening kickoff back for a touchdown. And you're like, holy shit, what do we do? Oh my God, we're panicking, right? That's a distraction. Stick to the plan. Or an opportunity comes up to make a lot of money. It's a little bit outside of what your service and product line is, but you do it because it's revenue, right? These little distractions here and there, and I think it's probably more prevalent in the first few years of a business, and you learn to maybe swat them away better as you get older, and you maybe 5, 10, 15 years in business. But that's what I mean by distraction. It's like, listen, this is our product, this is our niche, this is our service, this is who we serve, this is our market, this is exactly how we're going to do it. This is our operational plan, and so forth. And then all of a sudden something comes up that's just a little bit, shiny. And they get distracted by it, and then all of a sudden this starts to, the foundation of that starts to shake.
I mean, on that topic, I think being agile.
And prove me wrong, man. Believe me.
Well, I think in some cases you need that. In some cases you need to be agile and you need to be, move with times. But I believe in the role model of it is like, what's our goal? What's the reality of the situation? What's our opportunity and what's the way to move forward through that? And so, being super pragmatic about what's going to be the next thing that moves our company. Here's the thing: is often entrepreneurs and people who are in it, the intent is to go out there and move and do the best that they possibly can. And there's realities of cash flow. There's reality of a whole bunch of different aspects that we might not know. But this is the importance of coaching. This is the importance of a board. This is important of having people outside to give you purview, mentors or advisors. And so to really have that piece. Now, the ego part is some people are just like, I don't want that. I can do everything myself, right? And it's just kind of like, okay, well, and sometimes, and so in my experience, it's like, it takes a village. It takes a lot of people, and I'm standing on the shoulders of 1,000 people that have helped me in so many different directions. And so So that does happen. I think the
Mhm.
best ones are the ones that are the ones that can really stay focused and stay towards their big hairy audacious goals
Right.
and have strong alignment, and at the same time get everybody else on alignment. But it's natural. It's natural to go out there and get shiny
Yeah.
object and go through there. But come have a coach like you,
Yeah.
and have somebody to come out there and just can keep that accountability in place.
Right.
Which
It's
is
perspective.
yeah.
And that's why having conversations is really important. And conversations with people outside of your immediate circle of influence, like within your own company.
Yeah.
I when I work with CEOs and business owners, I say to them, I said, who do you talk to?
Yeah.
Like, there's no one above you. You're at the top.
Yeah.
It's lonely at the top. You are responsible, ultimately, in the end, for all decisions that are made. So who do you talk to about those things? Having a mentor, having an executive advisor, a business coach, an executive coach.
Yeah.
It's important to have. But getting back to the distraction and ego thing, which I think are enemies of entrepreneurs and business owners, do you have something that you would say you've seen over the years now that you're doing some coaching and mentoring, especially maybe with younger entrepreneurs? What is their greatest downfall in terms of what distracts them? And maybe not even a distraction, but what gets in their way? Or how do they get in their own way, maybe?
Yeah, I think we get stuck in the mud.
Okay.
Yeah, I just think it's like it's day in day out, and it's not really seeing the forest between the trees.
Okay.
One of the things that you indicated is like being distracted and not having that discipline of really being goal orientated and having that real sense of reality of the situation and staying on and moving exactly what needs to be moved. And sometimes that's hard, and it's going to be the least thing that we want to work on. It's just easier to kind of maybe work on something that is just a little bit more. A little bit easier to get through, or you might not want to have a hard conversation, or just get into the hard work of some things. Yeah.
Okay. Getting back to the concept of effort over results, is that I used to be very goal oriented. Growing up, it was about wins, it was about medals, achievements, getting the A on the test. Unfortunately, I think I raised my kids that way in their first few years, and I realized about 10 years ago, but more recently, that people don't understand the power of just doing the same thing over and over again, day after day, knowing that you're eventually going to get that ROI, that return on investment. And I think I've almost gotten to a point now where, dare I say it, I don't like when people set goals that are too specific and they want a specific result, because I think they put blinders on when that happens. And then they make all their decisions based on, will this get me to that particular goal or result? Because we can't predict the future. We can only predict the effort we put in now. What's your thought on that? When I say, I don't think, I'm just going to go on and say it. It's like, I don't think goals are necessarily the best thing to have. I think there's a direction, better to be directionally correct than absolutely correct.
Yeah, I think we're maybe looking at it a little bit differently in terms of how I think about how I look at goals. So like he's our $10 million, and that's our goal. It's like, the way I look at it is like, what is the next thing that is good we can do that's going to move the needle to get to our BHAG? Right. And so, for example, like the next goal that I need to do is I need to hire a CFO.
Yep.
Right. And that's my goal. So now I'm going to put my time, effort, and energy around what that looks like.
Right.
Right. And the reality of the situation is like, we have financial liabilities that need to be, taken care of,
Yeah.
or else we have at risk.
Right.
Right. And so like, I see that as the biggest threat in the company. That's how I take a look at it. And again, the reality of the situation, the opportunity, and the way forward around that.
Yep.
It's like, and then what's the next thing? So as a CEO, and I'm coming at it from a CEO perspective, is like, I'm looking at it from my big, hairy, audacious goal. I'm looking at it in terms of like, what can I put my time and effort into in order to go out there that's really going to move the needle?
Yep.
And often my goal is like, I may have to be a little bit more supportive to my leadership team. Right. And
Yep.
So, and if we want to take that, you move the word from goal to focus, we could do that as well.
Yep.
Right?
I like input and outcomes.
Yeah, sure. Like, you know what I mean? But
What are the inputs I have to do to get outcomes?
Yeah, but
in general?
And it's just, and it's really, we're just staying super hyper disciplined. You know what I mean? In terms of like, this is what I think is going to move the needle in terms of like, it's, and it's not like it's this company, and to get to the end of the day, it's not like building a house. It's like, we just gotta hammer one nail at a time. And it's just like making sure that we're continually doing that in the right spots. And so that's how I look at it. Not these big, like, okay, I got my 5-year, 10-year, or whatever the
Right.
case be. It's just like, and I often said this in my companies: chop wood, carry water. Chop wood, carry water.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that. What would you tell? And I was going to say your son, but let's take it outside the family. What would you tell a young high school student that says, "I want to own my own business. I want to be an entrepreneur"?
Yeah. And I tell them, and I joke at universities about this.
What would you ask them to maybe to test them to see if they're entrepreneur ready?
Yeah, I don't think I would tell them. I speak to a lot of entrepreneurs, and the
Yeah.
first thing I tell them is, don't take a job. But with this caveat, and this caveat is this: is that, listen, you want to be an entrepreneur and you want to do that. I said, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, obviously you have an interest in a vertical. If you have an interest in a vertical, I encourage you to take a job at a startup with 20% or less in that vertical. That it gives you an opportunity to go out there and in 20% less, is that you're going to end up not just having one job, you're going to have probably 4. Right? You're getting an opportunity to see if, like, do I like this industry? Do I like, is this what I want to put my life's work towards?
Yeah.
Am I passionate about this problem? But all the nuances of like running a business is like, okay, well, who takes care of insurance? Who signs the lease?
Right.
Am I taking out the garbage? Or are you taking out the garbage? It's just like, literally, it's like, well, who buys the toilet paper for the bathroom?
Right.
All these different aspects of like entrepreneurialism that like they aren't taught in school.
Right.
And then also, like, you get to go get a little bit of HR experience and the human factor. You get to understand exactly what it takes in order to really, build something that might not really exist. And so when it comes time, when it's your time, you have a purview, you have an understanding. I don't want to scare anybody, but it's not a 9 to 5 job. It's
As long as you're awake.
yeah, and it's continuing to go on. And again, like you will create enterprise value at some point where you may be able to step away from it. So that's my advice to young folks is take a job, and not a job where it's like all of a sudden there's a big salary, and now next thing you know you're using some of that disposable income to have car payments and put yourself in a situation where you're running in a debt cycle. But in a situation where we're using this as like life learning and lessons, because you will learn really quickly. And I think you talk to most people who've worked in any job after they've gone to school, they realize they probably learned more in their job than they did at school, but they actually had that foundational knowledge to set them up to learn, and that's what I encourage.
I'm gonna push the envelope a little bit with this question.
Yeah, please.
In terms of ultimately going on to own a business or be an entrepreneur, what's more valuable, real world experience or an MBA?
In the tech world, it's kind of a funny joke, and the company evaluation.
Tech world's unique, I get that, but still,
they say MBA is minus 500,000 in terms of valuation, right? Or minus $1 million in terms of valuation. So I think there's merit to MBA, there's merit to learning, and there's merit to that, and I think that you'll need that. And I often think that MBAs are like they work in established organizations.
There's a path that comes with it, more or less.
Yeah, and it's more of a job taker role.
Sure.
I think from entrepreneurs, they're job makers, and they're generally breaking stuff, and
Right.
and they're not sequential, and they're not they're moving, and I don't necessarily think that's an MBA or typical MBA sort of foundational aspect of like being an entrepreneur. But it's just I've seen most of the big companies that I've seen and that have been rolled out, especially in tech, are not run by MBAs.
No. I used to say that the only way you truly learn how to run a business is to run a business. Yeah. And like you said, fail forward, make mistakes, learn from them. I know we did that when we owned our company. Who are some of your mentors or inspirations during your first few years? Maybe once you've left teaching, now you're running the DJ company, or even once you got into Picatic and Eventbrite, and then on with Gunkii. Who are some of the people you look to for inspiration? Who have you talked to, maybe hung out with?
Yeah, well, I mean, one of them is, without question, is one of my board members with Picatic, and he's just a phenomenal guy. His name's Matt. Listen, he's a great pedigree, a Stanford guy. No, Princeton guy. Built his own tech company, sold it. Absolutely, just a phenomenal person. But he was that guy that he was my accountability partner. He was on the board. He kept me in line, and so we continually we're now in a position where we co-advise each other,
Mhm.
and we meet on a bi-monthly basis to this joint, and we go on men's retreats together.
Mhm.
And so, I have a few friends like that
Yeah.
where it's, we talk on a bi-monthly basis and just say, hey, here's what we're doing. And we do yearly compasses in terms of making sure, okay, here's where we're starting, here's where we want to go. And we tell each other so that we can keep each other accountable.
Okay.
And so we can help grow. So I have a handful of those people. And what that does is it helps me not get static. It helps me keep, myself, responsible, because I don't want to let myself down
Mhm.
and or be
Sure.
embarrassed.
Yeah.
Like, it's like,
Of course.
I haven't done any homework, or I don't want, I don't have nothing to report. So we make sure that each other we don't get too comfortable, which is cool. It's nice to have that.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be a professional coach in some cases,
Yep.
even though I do have coaches
Yep.
myself. But like in this case, is that it's just, it's just it's just a friend at this
Mhm.
point. Yeah.
Let's switch to leadership. I know that you do some leadership coaching. I know that I've done my fair share as well. And there's always the big question. It's like, what makes a great leader? And everybody's going to have a slightly different definition, although it seems like the definition is becoming more refined and specific these days. But in past roles where you've been a leader, you're currently a leader, or leaders that you've seen, what are two or three of the absolute must-have traits, personality traits of a leader? And try not to be too cliche,
Yeah.
which is hard to do
Yeah.
because everybody says the same three things. But
I'll tell you like what my style was, and maybe what I'll do is I'm a servitude leader,
okay,
right? So I'm
servant leadership, yeah.
yeah. So my job, especially with it, and I'll share a bit of modesty, is like, my team, they've sold houses, gave away a dog, moved across the country. Some have moved across the world in order to go out there and join my team in order to build what we do in terms of this vision that we have. But the thing that, with the people that have worked with me, right, and not for me, with people that work with me, is that my role as a CEO is, and I've always told them, is I'm here to serve you. It's like you bring the best of, once you're doing your job, it's like, how can I bring out the best of you? What can I do to support what you need to do in order to do your job? And so for me, that is something that really, really worked, and something that I stand by, is that servitude leadership. And again, like I really tried to work on, EQ as well, and in making sure that I understand what their motivations were.
Sure.
And in some cases, it's not money. For example, it's like really understanding. It's like, actually, my kid has go on Friday afternoons, and I have to take him to these appointments. And it's like, okay, well, you need Fridays off, or Friday afternoons off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So really understanding the people, because we're really at the end of the day, every business is in the people business. And so that was my style of leadership. Then another thing the two is like, I really was like really worked on really condensing what our message was, and being really great in communication, and having a strong, big, hairy, audacious goal, and really like getting alignment on that,
Yeah.
and re-echoing it, and making sure people were aligned, and they knew exactly, everybody in the company knew exactly where we're going, what our morals and values and everything were around that piece. And so those are the things. And then lastly is just, just making sure that everyone knew that the buck stopped with me. You know what I mean? Like there's no blame. There's no, whatever the case be. It's like, if there's something that would happen, it's like, hey, I was the one responsible for it. At the end of the day, I hired that person that hired that person that hired that person. And that really took into leadership, because like, and what I found through that is like that got really adopted in culture, because what ends up happening is leadership often, and what my belief is just not what you say when you're there, it's what happens when you're not around. Are these people adopting the culture, the mission, the vision, the passion? When they're taking that leadership role, are they doing what you're seeing and what you're doing? And so that's kind of how I led, and it's worked well. It worked really, really well. So yeah, it's a sense of empowerment.
I read a LinkedIn post the other day, and it basically said that great company culture and leadership is shown not through, not through bonuses, not through Friday afternoon barbecues, but how your employees feel on Sunday night.
Yeah.
What does that say to you?
I think that emotional intelligence part and understanding what people's motivations are.
Yeah.
And some people may want that, and and I found like through the scope and the tenure of all, of all the team members that I got the ability and the privilege to work with, there are different life cycles. If they had a new baby, they need different things. If they're single and they're young, they need something. If they have a family of 4, they needed something else. So it was like making sure we were trying to stay in tune with that as much as we possibly could.
One of the biggest challenges for leaders and business owners today is two things. It's the, especially post-COVID, it's the return to work challenge. Asking people to come back to the office. The other one being what I still hear on the regular is the Gen Z problem. Let's address one of those.
Okay.
Because I know you work with people probably of a fairly wide age range, although maybe younger. Is there a Gen Z problem in terms of the culture they're looking for compared to what the Gen Xers and Boomers are providing? What's the disconnect there?
Yeah, I think it's when we start going, I think as we get really, really in trouble in a muddy world is when we start having like vagueness over like Gen Z. When you're an organization, like let's get back to people. Right? Let's find out exactly what motivates these folks. And if, there's no question what motivates me at my age, coming to 50 years old is going to be something that's different than somebody who's 25 years old. Yeah, and so is that a problem? No, we have different motivations. We have different, different drivers. And I see them as opportunities. I see if we can go and figure out exactly what motivates you and what brings out the best of you and how we can get your creative juices and get your genius into work, that's what we need to do. And I think that's what good leaders do.
Yeah.
That's what good people do. That's what good managers do. So is there a Gen Z problem? I think that's just like, super, super, super high umbrella.
I think the best leaders don't, sorry to say it this way, but they don't see age.
Yeah.
And the theory that I have is when you and I were, let's say when we were 18, 19, 20, we were starting our first job and I was working overnight as a stock boy at the local grocery store. We wanted the same things that these kids want now. It's just that back then, the leaders, the owners, the managers and whatever, society wasn't telling them that they had to give it to us, right? And let me explain myself a little bit better here. But I still think that everybody who has been in an employee position wants to feel like they're cared for, wants to feel like they're in a safe environment. And I don't mean occupational health and safety. I mean just safe mentally, physically, and so forth. They want to feel like that Sunday night, like I'm good to go to work Monday morning. Like I like where I go. I like where I work. We all wanted that too as kids back in the 1900s. It's just that this generation is now, I don't like using the term demand it, but they don't want anything different than we ever wanted. It's just that today's leader is having to adapt more, because if you think of the best leaders from 20, 30, 40 years ago, they were providing those things. The best companies in the world in the 1980s and 90s had cultures and environments where regardless of age, people felt safe. They felt like they had a voice. They weren't chastised for having new ideas or being innovative. Same thing as today, the best leaders are doing it. It's just we're now asking all leaders to do it and to change. Does that resonate with you? Because like I said, I don't think there's a Gen Z problem. I think the problem lies at the top. It's not these young people that are causing the problem. They're just saying, I'll work hard. And I think a lot of them have a lot more to provide a company than some people who are in their 40s and 50s. It's just, it's now time for the leaders and the owners of these businesses to adjust to that.
You nailed it on the head.
Right?
Yeah, you nailed it on the head. It's like there's, everything adapts and changes. And we have to adapt and change with the times. Yeah. A really fun thing that I just learned the other day is a friend of mine's law firm moved and everyone's office went down to 150 square feet from these big corner offices.
Sure.
And the reality of it is just like they just don't use paper anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's their adoption, and then they have surf desks, and they have all these different aspects. And so, like, again, the adapt. We got to modify. We got to go with the times.
Yeah.
And so we now have supercomputers in our pocket.
Yeah.
We want to be able to get in people's flow zones. And if you know, does it mean that they have to work in the office? Does it mean that they work hybrid? Does it mean, I don't know, what works best for your business?
Sure.
What's going to bring out the best of your people?
Yeah.
What works good? And like, to me, I love in office. Like, I do, because I think for senior and intermediate, like, I can totally understand why you want to work from home.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But junior to like new intermediate, that water cooler, those serendipitous moments, that osmosis learning is gone.
Yeah.
And that culture of being able to knowledge share is not as prevalent as it, but it can still be done through technology, but it's just a little different. But maybe that's just because I was so used to that.
Yeah.
What I mean? But at the same time, there's merit to hybrid work. Every organization is completely different.
Yeah.
Grew our company, it moved from totally in-house to like completely distributed to different parts of the world. And we end up getting talent that had different vantage points, different. So we got away from groupthink. We got away, and now our company got stronger with new ideas. And so there's different powers that came through it. So we evolved.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that most companies are learning that they gotta evolve.
I don't think there's no one right answer. I don't think either side is wrong. I think it's what works best for your company in the situation.
Yeah.
If you have people that don't require being around coworkers and they're literally just in front of a computer all day but they're able to get their job done, okay, they can work from home.
Yeah.
Like you said, those water cooler conversations, the conversations you have over the cubicle walls, are important. And it's a bit of a struggle now for some companies, especially with so many empty buildings still lying around, post COVID. Last thing on leadership, what is the biggest mistake even the best leaders make? What are some things that, well, no, let's not even go multiple. What do you think is the one thing that you think leaders of today are just missing?
Yeah, I think the micromanagement. Yeah, not understanding the emotional intelligence, not understanding purpose. I talk a little bit about that a lot. Every employee wants to feel purposeful. They want to learn. They want to grow.
Yeah.
And often they'll leave, a company not because of the company, it's because who they manage, who they report into.
Yeah.
And I think often that it's not being empowered. And I think that that tight grip, right?
Yeah.
Not, I think that if that tight grip and having your own ideology of how you think something should work, and not shaking up the tree a little bit, I think that creates conflict. And I'm not saying it's like free nilly by any means, but I'm just like, okay, like, let's understand exactly how we can empower people.
Yeah.
And I think that's that piece, that leadership. And when you're a leader, that's what your job is to lead. And I think part of that is empowerment. And I think the biggest mistake that we do make is exactly that. Is I've seen leaders that have really tough time is they can't influence, motivate, and empower people, and then they just lose it, and people are churning, and next thing you know, it's just really difficult with inside that org or that part of the organization.
Currently, you're doing coaching, mentoring, leadership, executive type stuff. What are you learning about yourself in that? Not what are you learning from the people you're working with? What are you learning about yourself?
Well, one, I'm learning that I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm learning that I love it. Just nothing that gets me more jammed up in terms of like, we have to run somebody. A great example is, founder needed to raise $250,000, and we were able to do it really quickly. And work through the process in order to get to that. Or there's a problem here, and we can help. And so I often say this: I'm standing on the shoulders of 1,000 people that have helped me, and to be able to use that knowledge to impart and provide back, it's a really good feeling. It's a really, really good feeling. So I'm learning that, and then at the same time, it's like throughout that whole entire process is I'm learning just as much. Like every time I'm coaching, mentoring, advising, I feel like I'm just learning just as much on the flip side as well. You get purviews into different companies, different ways things work, and so it's that thirst for lifelong learning is continually being at, or scratches being itched, and so I'm getting that. Yeah.
Okay. We're gonna finish off the lightning round.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair, yeah.
So we're gonna fire away and just give me the best answer you can. Best book you've read in the last year.
Oh, okay.
And if you don't read, that's fine too.
No.
But
It's Dr. Dispenza.
Joe
Joe
Dispenza,
Dispenza.
yeah.
I consume probably so much of his knowledge and so much of his teachings, and so he's a big influence on my life. So
Okay.
like that, everything and anything that he writes, he talks about, and he does, I consume it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Favorite city you've lived in?
Right. My current city is Vancouver.
Yeah.
When I pre-children, San Francisco or New York City or San Francisco. Yeah.
Were you guys in Chicago at some point? Or
No.
Or is that just where we ran into each
That's
other?
where we ran into each other. Yeah, I forgot about that.
I got to tell the story. So I remember, so we were in Chicago, my wife and I.
Yeah.
We posted something to Facebook. I think you saw it,
totally
and you're
forgot.
like, Quinn, are you in Chicago?
Yeah.
Let's get together tonight for a drink.
Yeah.
And you said, yeah, we'll meet you downtown. You had a limo,
Yeah.
and you said, yeah, we're hanging out with one of the new dragons. And I'm like, dragons? What do you mean by dragons? You're like, from Dragon's Den, from the show,
Yeah.
the newest dragon. I'm like, who is it? And you're like, Michelle Romano. I'm like, really? So we ended up hanging out that night.
Yeah, man.
Rooftop bar in Chicago.
Yeah.
I'm sitting across from Michelle, who you all know from Dragon's Den now. I am intimidated.
Are you?
Absolutely. I thought I knew business
Yeah.
enough to at least hang
Yeah.
with anybody, even if I had to kind of BS, fake it to make it a little bit.
Yeah.
She tore me apart.
She did.
Yep.
Oh.
And I love her for it.
Yeah.
I absolutely love her for it because it's kind of like when that VC, when the person said,
Yeah.
you're not ready. Yeah. Basically, the message I got from Michelle was, you're not ready. Like, you need to learn more, guy. And I loved it.
Yeah. I know what these people are doing. It's just easier for them not to say anything, but they're doing it in order to go out there and help and empower. And that radical candor is helpful. And I knew that now as I look back. Mitch is awesome. She's good. I totally forgot. I
know, right?
I totally forgot about that night.
You were with Nick and I think and my wife, and you were having a drink somewhere, and Michelle and I were on the couches, just chatting, and she's like, so what do you do? And I told her, and she kept asking me questions, and I knew it. I was going down a spiral.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't answer this question. I can't even make it up. And now one of the newest dragons is my former boss, so to speak, Brian Scudamore from 1-800-GOT-JUNK. So that's cool. Sorry, quick lightning round. Favorite food?
It's gonna be
your mom's cooking.
Yeah, my mom's Indian cook.
I've had your mom's cooking. It's awesome.
It is. Oh God, just so good.
Yeah. Best moment in your life that wasn't business related?
It's anything with my family.
Yeah.
Getting married.
One
You
child, two kids?
One. Yeah.
Your boy's 11, you said?
He's 11.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's just.
Is he a good hockey player as you are? Or not? Which wouldn't be.
He's gonna be the best beer league hockey player.
Just like you were.
We're gonna rock our locker room when we're our age.
Any books in the future? Have you written a book? Do you want to write a book?
No, I don't.
It seems like everyone just writes a book these days.
Yeah.
I'm writing a book right now.
Yeah, what's it about?
It's on effort over results. It's the history of how we are genetically hardwired for hard work.
Yeah.
We become better for it.
Yeah.
We grow because of it, like you said. The prefrontal cortex and the oh my God, anterior mid-cingulate cortex. Now I'm Huberman. I'm geeking out. Grows, and the more hard work you put yourself through that you don't want to do, the more you crave it. One, and the more you get used to it, and things become easier. And maybe that's a David Goggins thing, but at the same time, no, it's effort or results. It comes around the concept of it's all about the effort you put into something. You got to stop thinking about what the future holds, what the result might be, what the outcome might be. You can have a general outcome of what you want, and goals. We're not saying goal setting's terrible, but once you've set the goal, it's like set it and forget it, and then just put the inputs in.
Chop wood, carry water.
Chop wood, carry water. I love that.
Yeah.
And it is about effort first, then results, because there are some people out there, and I speak about it in the book. My daughter, who could just show up and win races, show up and get an A, show up and be the best athlete in the field. But we kept telling her and praising her for the result. And that's a mistake. With your own children, with students, with your employees, with anybody you're trying to grow, it's a mistake to praise them for the result. You want to praise them for the effort they put in to get the result. Because when you praise them for the result, they figure, okay, that's the bar that's set, that's the only bar that's set, and if I don't reach that result, Next time, I failed. They don't see the A to Y. They just see the Z and whether they reach Z or not.
Yeah, how the sausage is made, where the hard work puts in, yeah.
Journey, what they learned. I mean, you can make it all the way to the end and have failed, and still what you learn from that, like there's profit in all labor. I mean, it's a biblical saying, but still there is. And so that's the book that I'm writing, is the concept and the history of that we're wired for hard work, how it applies to business and education and sports and raising your kids and each other in relationships even.
When's it out? And how can
Hopefully by the end of 2025, but we'll see. Yeah.
I would definitely.
I didn't realize how important that message is, especially for young children.
Yeah.
And I wish I could go back and re-raise my kids, but I guess I'll do that with the grandkids in
Yeah.
the future. So let's talk about what you're doing now. What are you doing now? What do you got exciting coming up here in 25?
Yeah, well, so I'm just coaching, mentoring, advising, and I am coming on as an entrepreneur in resident with collabs and about different startup accelerators throughout Canada and working with founders all throughout North America. So it's just helping anybody and everybody that especially around the startup world, to help them, empower them to be the people that they want to do, so they can build their dreams. And that's something that really motivates and has been really driving me.
Well, you have always, and I'm not trying to get all soft on you here, but you have always been an inspiration to me from the day we met, which was years ago in the 90s. I loved your energy. I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to learn, and nothing's really changed, Jay. Like you're still the same guy that I know, and I know that you're going to be really successful in helping other people because you do have that energy. And I believe in energy. I believe in people when they walk into a room, how other people feel around them, and you just have that contagious energy that's always so positive, man. So thanks very much. I appreciate it. I'm going to put in the show notes what Jay's up to, his LinkedIn connection. Do you have any other socials you want to plug?
No.
You're a pretty private guy.
Yeah, no, I'm not private. It's easy to get a hold of. Just on LinkedIn, reach out, come say hi.
Okay.
I'm just I'm proud of you. I love seeing what you're doing. I'm excited about the book. I'm excited in terms of your journey, and it's just fun watching what you do, and you are helping so many phenomenal people. It's good to call you a friend.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. All right.